Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of Lesser Known but Awesome Heroes. Or rather, I should say, the first in the series of my Black History mini-marathon. And of course, today, as you can tell by this picture, I'm going to be putting a shock to your system. Yes, I actually just did say that pun. But moving on, today I'll be talking about Vergil Hawkins, also known as Static. Yes, so let's get right into it. Now, originally when Static was first created, he was originally going to be a character made for Marvel Comics. And unfortunately, Marvel didn't really, I guess for some reason, think that his character was cool enough, or because Dwayne McDuffie, one of the guys that created him, pretty much, I guess they thought that he was too much like Peter Parker. Dwayne McDuffie created him as well as John Paul Leon, and his first appearance was in Static #1 in June of 1993. And Dwayne McDuffie's biggest inspiration for creating Vergil was actually Spider-Man. He basically made him a contemporary version of Peter Parker. He had a mother, his sister, and his father. And Vergil was a young teenager, very intelligent, very enthusiastic, but he did get bullied a lot. And it was because he got bullied that one night he decided to join, a gang, or be part of a gang war, a rumble. And the gang war basically got out of control. And police used tear gas with this experimental tear gas. Well, turns out this was an experiment turns out it was an experimental tear gas created by a pharmaceutical company that had basically a mutagenic property in it called quantum juice, or Q juice. And this was to basically turn people into metahumans. And this would be referred to in the Dakotaverse as the Big Bang, and Vergil would be one of the Bang babies. People that gained their abilities from the Big Bang. And when pharmaceutical company members overrode police and basically tried to use a hazmat deal to capture Vergil, that's when Vergil discovered that he had gained the metahuman ability to attract, repel, and even sometimes physically shoot out electromagnetic force. He does shoot electricity, but a lot of Vergil's abilities are electromagnetic in origin. And he can actually manipulate magnetism, and he can generate kind of, I guess you can say, ionic energy of sorts. Which, for those of you who have actually watched the cartoon and always wonder why he rode on kind of like a sewer grate or something, you'll kind of understand why. He's basically manipulating the electromagnetic spectrum to be able to fly on that grate and be able to lift stuff and whatnot and what have you. And Vergil would eventually, much like Peter Parker, he would actually keep this secret from his family, and he would balance being a 15-year-old African-American kid and still in high school, but he would also balance his superhero duties. And he was originally by DC back then when Jeff Johns was still doing the Teen Titans. He had always wanted to put Static on the team. However, DC kept telling him that he would not be put on the team until, I would say, about 2008 or so. And the interesting fact is that actually he was the quote-unquote poster boy of Milestone Comics, which was created by Dwayne McDuffie as like an offshoot for DC superheroes in the minority, i.e. black, Latin, and what have you. In 1997, they stopped actually making comics. That's when Milestone got shut down. However, of course, as those of you who are fans of the cartoon, a little interesting fact, for 4 whole seasons, Static had his own cartoon right when Milestone was shut down. And actually in 2011, in early June 2011, they were going to do a revitalization of Static. They were going to give him his ongoing solo series. However, it would be canceled, sadly, after Dwayne McDuffie's passing. What's also interesting about Vergil is that he's an avid comic book collector and video gamer, and he also apparently, according to the Static Rebirth of Cool that debuted after the cartoon series ended after the cartoon series ended its 4th season, and it was 2001, that we apparently found out that Vergil's also into collecting Pokemon cards and that Pikachu is one of his favorite characters. Yes, I realize that I'm sporadic and all over the place and telling stuff that makes no sense, but just go with me here, people. But what's also really interesting is that Vergil looks up to Icon and many others. One of his idols, of course, is John Stewart, the Green Lantern. And what's really also quite interesting is that he would eventually become a member of the Teen Titans, and he would actually be an associated ally for the Justice League. And Vergil had teamed with many different superhero groups: the Justice League, the Teen Titans, the Shadow Cabinet, a slight group called Heroes. He kind of was official and unofficially on many different teams, and what's interesting is that Vergil had his own rogues gallery. He has his own rogues gallery fighting characters like the Rubber Band Man, and some characters were created for the cartoon, some characters were in the comics, but characters like Hot Streak, Ebon Streak, Rubber Band Man, Talon, Dr. Kilgore, quite a few characters, Holocaust. You know, Vergil has quite an extensive rogues gallery in his own right. And what's interesting is that when they later would relaunch the DCU after Flashpoint, the Dakota, he wouldn't be based in Dakota, he would be based in New York. And unfortunately, as I had recently been told, his solo comic in the New 52 got dropped, but that he was going to be part of the Teen Titans books, which, okay, beggars can't really be choosers. And what's a little interesting fact is that Vergil's name actually comes from the first African American to go to law school, but he was also, and his first two names, Vergil and Ovid, which is his middle name, are both actually Roman poets. And there's quite a few other instances where he's been kind of talked about. There was even, but one interesting fact that is really humorous is that a lot of people say that he may be related to Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning. And I find that very interesting because I can see how people can draw that conclusion. Because in a way, Black Lightning and Static both do kind of have the same similar powers, but with the major difference being that Jefferson Pierce can actually become pure electricity, whereas Vergil can just more or less tap into the electromagnetic spectrum. So they're similar, yet at the same time they are vastly different. And what's really interesting is that he had a friend whose name was a lot different in the comics, but it was essentially Gear, who was Static's best friend in the cartoon. He went under a different name, but nevertheless they revealed that character was based on Static's actual friend in the comics, who, let me look at this really quick. Gotta scroll up here with this information. Come on. Ah, here we go. Rick Stone. Rick Stone would be portrayed in the cartoon, but what the writers didn't really talk about is that actually this character was actually homosexual, which is very interesting in its own right. But then again, it's Dwayne McDuffie, and Dwayne McDuffie, as a writer, always tried to break stereotypes. He always tried to break these archetypes with characters, and I think the great thing about Vergil as a character is that he does that. He doesn't follow any quote unquote black stereotype. He's just a very normal, relatable teenager who is given superpowers and has to kind of balance his life out. He has to balance, life, love, sex, being a superhero, his family life, dealing with all the responsibilities of being both a hero and, a responsible, son and brother and whatnot and what have you. But I'm rambling on, guys. This video's went on a lot longer than I really wanted it to. But that is Vergil Hawkins. That is Static in a nutshell, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And although I thought about putting a picture up, but honorable mention at the end of this video is Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning, who I've talked about alongside Moon Knight. So check out that video if you want to. But the marathon continues.